Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm James Pouncey, and today I'm joined by Paul. We're here to do a pre-Wolves preview, or just a Wolves preview, should I say. Obviously, we're playing Wolves on the weekend. Just about as much of a must-win game as you can get in August on match day 3, I think is probably fair to say.
A 6 pointer, 3 games in.
Yeah, unbelievable. And there's another one coming as well afterwards when we play Sheffield United. I mean, it's really damaging. Obviously, I know Sean Dyche spoke today. He sort of mentioned that, or I think it was kind of alluded to, and if we'd beaten Fulham like we should have done first game of the season, things wouldn't feel quite so bad. But back-to-back defeats, the news yesterday, still no new players, a growing injury list. A game which when I watched Wolves get absolutely slaughtered last weekend, I thought this is a game we can really win. It now looks like it's going to be a real tough assignment, which is just an indictment of where we are at the minute. Because again, we just feel like we're throwing games away and circling the drain before the season's even really kind of got up to speed.
Yeah, Wolves are they found themselves in a scenario very similar to us, don't they? They've got uh, a lot of problems off the pitch. They've got their own FFP problems. They had a manager who walked out on them on the eve of the season when he found out that he basically had no money at all to do any business. I don't know why he left it so late to go. Whether there was he only found out late on that there was no business. Whether he was lied to. Whether he sat there for a few weeks, tried to do deals, couldn't get them, and then walked off in a strop. Lopetegui, you don't know, but their season has begun in just as much disarray as Everton's has, if you can believe that. Really, the first game of the season, like us, when we played Fulham, they played United away, and they were the better side. I felt they really should have won that game. They ended up coming away with nothing. An appalling referee decision cost them the result in that. For me, just like the appalling referee decision cost Everton in the first game of the season. And then second game, when you think, okay, yeah, last week's behind us now, let's go into this game sort of fresh new attitudes. Let's pick up where we left off performance wise. And then it just they completely capitulated, didn't he? Just like Everton. I think Tarkowski said it himself. The Everton captain or the acting captain came out and said, we gave up after one goal. And it looked like Everton's gave up. And it certainly looked like Wolves gave up. I don't know. It's as I said, it just has the feeling of a 6 pointer, and that's crazy when you consider that we're not even out of August yet. But these are just two teams that are in for a long season, and it's going to be really hard and really depressing at times. And if one of us is going to go down, you just hope from an Everton perspective, it's not us, couldn't you? But I am glad it's at Goodison though. Hopefully, the Goodison crowd can make the difference, like they have done in some big high pressure games over the last few years. And if we can just get some points on the board, then hopefully that will help lift the mood around the place a little bit. Obviously, there's still an awful lot of problems going on at Everton that are not going to get sorted out short term or even medium term, given the news that's broken recently. But if we can just get some points on the board, then hopefully it will just allow the fan base to take a little bit of a breath, sort of thing, and not be quite so sort of in despair as we all currently are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I'd say very similar start to the season on the pitch, off the pitch. Obviously, we kept our manager, thankfully. They've properly circled the drain as far as I'm concerned. They ended up with Gary O'Neill. I think that they say they played really well against United. They should have definitely got at least something from that game, and then they were really poor last weekend. Um, and we both come into this game winless, and you do think that by the end of the season, one of these teams will go down. You'd imagine, say, hopefully it is in us, but we will see.
Yeah, I'd be stunned if both of us survive. I really would. Even this early on in the season, I'm comfortable making that judgment that at least one of these two teams, Everton or Wolves, will be in the bottom three, unless something dramatic happens between now and the deadline day. But it doesn't look likely for either one of us, does it?
No, I mean, I think the news at Wolves looks like they might even lose more players. I mean, obviously, Mateus Nunes looks like he could be going to City. Thankfully, he won't be playing on the weekend. He's obviously suspended. I didn't even realise that until the other day. That turned off towards the end of their game last weekend. But yeah, so they were really poor then. And I think, like us, they're going to come into this game now with sort of That
A massive
kind of
cloud hanging over them, a lot of pressure. They know if they don't get the result, then it's just, it's going to ramp up even worse back at home, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was speaking to someone. They were saying, it's not a must-win game. It's too early in the season. I sort of said, well, theoretically, the only must-win games you have are if you don't win that game, then something happens, you go down, you don't make it into Europe or whatever. That's the only kind of must-win game. But like any must-win game you have is like we're probably not going to pick up points at these other parts. This is going to be a relegation rival. Fulham will probably be okay. Obviously, Villa will be fine as well. So this is the first, as we call it, 6 pointers. These 6 pointers and these Goodison crowds kind of relying games are getting earlier and earlier season on season now. We're talking second home game and we're already thinking, is it time for the fans to kind of play their part and sucking the ball into the net? So it's really disappointing. But in terms of the game itself, obviously I mentioned Mateus Nunes not going to be playing for them on the weekend, which is a big bonus. But he was very good, particularly against Man United, first game of the season. But our injury list now stands at Jack Harrison, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Alex Iwobi, Dwight McNeil, Seamus Coleman. I mean, I'm not even sure where or how we're going to plug these gaps. I think they're going to be some pretty either unpopular choice on the weekend. The likes of Neil Mope probably going to have to play again, and then someone like Lewis Dobbiner, very likely, I think, to get, if not thrown in from the start. I think we'll probably see him at some point on the weekend. How would you kind of line up for this challenge? Because there's kind of 3 or 4 holes to plug and not many players to do that.
I get what you're saying. Yeah, it's going to be a team that I think people that fans are going to have a grumble about because options are so limited. He's going to have to use certain players, but there's 2 players in particular where if they are in the starting lineup, I just think the atmosphere is going to be awful. Sadly, you'd hope that fans would be willing to put it to the side and go in there and just kind of get the Goodison Raw going straight away, no matter what they think of the team the manager selected. But we've just been through the mill the last few years, and we're so used to seeing certain players get played, and then they let us down horribly when they do get a chance. That fans can't really be blamed for not having any belief in them. And those 2 players are Michael Keane and Morpay. I think if either of those 2 is in the starting 11 when the teams come out at 2 o'clock, I just think going into the ground, the atmosphere is going to be at best flat, at worst toxic.
Yeah,
Especially
it's
if we don't,
toxic. Yeah.
especially if we don't start the game well. If we concede an early goal or we don't really get on the ball much and we don't create any chances, I just think the crowd is ripe for turning on the manager. I think more so than the players. That's another video whether or not the manager deserves the fans to be turning on him at this point. But I think he's got to do himself a favour because Jareth Branthwaite is, for all we know, he's fully fit. He's ready for selection. It's an easy call to make, isn't it? To bring him in and give him a chance over the likes of Michael Keane, who has been horrific to start the season, and he was horrific in nearly every game he's played prior to this season as well for a long time. And there's Neil Maupay, who was just utterly diabolical against Fulham. It was, and he had plenty of chances to hit the back of the net for Everton in that and put us in the lead or salvage the game, and he completely blew it. I don't think he deserves to be trusted. So, but again, what's the options to go up front then? Calvert-Lewin's the injury curse has struck again. Damari Gray, if he's still at the club by then, because he's meant to be leaving any day, but if he's still here, Damari Gray, by Saturday, he's not going to be in the match squad because, as I said, he's probably just waiting on a phone call to be told when he can leave for Saudi Arabia or whatever it is he's going. So there's no option of him. Lewis Dobbin, I think he played as more of a number 9 type of role at youth level, but all the senior football he's played when he's gone out on loan, he's been more of a wide player. I don't know. In terms of putting someone up front, I really don't want it to be Maupay, but unless you just take a real gamble and you play someone you play Danjuma there again. Danjuma's not typically a centre forward, but I'm willing to bet over if he's fully fit, he could do more than Neil Maupay would over 90 minutes. But the big one has got to be he can't start Michael Keane. If he starts Michael Keane, then I think he's just asking for the fans to get on his back straight away. And I've got no faith at all that we could keep a clean sheet even against like a Wolves with Michael Keane in the team. And he's had a lot of stick recently, Michael Keane. I'll wrap this up now, but and a lot of it has been really, really nasty, and you don't like seeing that. But at the end of the day, you've got to call a spade a spade. Michael Keane has not been good enough to be playing in a Premier League team, especially not a Premier League team that is in crisis mode already. So the manager's got to take a very my opinion, brave decision rather than just taking the easy decision of playing his friend. He's got to make the brave decision of saying to his friends, "Look, you've got to come out the line of fire. I've gave you a chance and you haven't taken it. You're going to have to sit back and wait now."
Yeah, precisely. I mean, obviously, you mentioned on he's getting a lot of kind of criticism and abuse from some quarters. Obviously, it's not nice to see players getting sort of properly dragged through it, and obviously sometimes it goes too far, of course. But obviously, as you say, it's a case of he hasn't been good enough, and we should be able to call that out. I think if he were to play Branthwaite, and then due to the lack of options, if more players up front, not something any of us want to see. I would. I'm not sure actually who I'd like out of the lineup more. It probably is Keane, I think, just about, but neither are good. I think maybe due to lack of options, Morpay
It's
could well
if
be up
yeah,
front.
if you can if one of them has got to play, then I'd rather see Morpay than Michael Keane because Neil Morpay, as bad as he is, Neil Morpay isn't costing us games like Michael Keane is. Morpay being horrific could be the difference between us winning and drawing. Michael Keane being horrific is the difference between us losing and drawing. So if one of them's going to come out the team, it's got to be Michael Keane. Ideally, it would be both of them. But for me, it's unjustifiable if Michael Keane is in the starting 11 against Wolves on Saturday. It really is. And as much as you want to back this manager and give him a chance, and I do believe that he's trying really hard behind the scenes and that he is trying to do the right things for the most part. Patience is really wearing thin, and it's getting increasingly hard to defend Sean Dyche when he keeps making errors such as the ones he's been making. As I said, it's an easy decision
Yeah,
for us on the outside looking in to drop Michael Keane. But for him, it's an easy decision for him to keep playing Michael Keane because he's his friend. It's a hard decision to pull someone who you're really close to and you've had a relationship going back long years, just being honest with them and saying you've not been good enough, you need to come out the team. And he hasn't been willing to do that so far. And if he wants to stay manager of Everton for the long term, because regardless of all our problems, we are still a big club. We're still the biggest club that Sean Dyche will probably ever get a chance to manage. If he wants to stay the manager for Everton for the long term, he's got to have to start learning to make these hard decisions, such as dropping players who he has a relationship with
yeah, and
when
I
they don't
think
justify their place.
yeah, exactly, and I think as well, like even if Branthwaite comes into the team and say we can see the goal off, I'm not talking a real proper mistake like what Michael Keane made, because no Premier League football should be making those kind of errors. But if he gets beaten in the air for a header or can't block a shot or something that goes in, you look at him as Branthwaite being the issue. I think we'd all stomach it a lot more than if it was someone who spent years, doing that, made a career at Everton off making those silly kind of mistakes. I think it's a case that either it's going to be a front three, with kind of a five and then a one of either Danjuma or Morpay. If it's Danjuma, that's going to be, you'd imagine, have to be Dobbin and Garner out wide, which is an absolutely horrendous front three. Or it'd be Danjuma, Morpay, and Garner, which is still really poor, but it probably has a bit more balance. Can't see Morpay getting any change out off Craig Dawson or Max Kilman in the air. I at least think Danjuma could pull them apart a little bit, but I'm not sure Morpay's going to be able to do that. It's going to be tricky, but the only thing I also want to mention in the lineup was at fullback. I think Ashley Young obviously made a mistake on the weekend against Villa. The whole team was awful as mentioned. Nathan Patterson has looked all at sea these first two games. I think looked really poor. Mikalenko's back on the bench, seemingly fit, played in that game last week against Man United. Do you think there's a chance he might bring Mikalenko back in and then put Ashley Young to right back, maybe, or do you think he'll leave it the way it is?
Uh, Going off the way Sean Dyche his team selection so far, I think he's likely to leave Ashley Young in because going back to what I said a minute ago, he knows Ashley Young, he's got a relationship with him, and he trusts him for better or for worse. So it would surprise me if Ashley Young came out the side. It wouldn't massively surprise me if he decides to shift him over to the right and put Michaelenko in, but I definitely don't see Ashley Young getting dropped. But just touching on Nathan Patterson, I've felt sorry for Nathan Patterson these first few games because, I felt this at times last season as well. I just don't think Nathan Patterson is quite ready for the Premier League. Personally, I'm not saying that he's a player who we should be giving up on or he deserves a ton of stick off the fans or he's someone who was a bad buy necessarily. I think he was the right player for the wrong time. Nathan Patterson personally, because he came into how many senior games Nathan Patterson played? I think it's less than 50
It is less than
still.
50. Yeah, I think I've seen a stat the other day.
I know he's had his injuries. I know he's been unlucky. He should have played well over 50 by now if he hadn't had picked up these knocks here and there. But when he signed him from Rangers, he was still a baby. He barely featured in the Rangers first team, and that was the Scottish League, which was nowhere close to comparable to the quality in the Premier League. So, in an ideal world, Nathan Patterson would come out the side and he would be an apprentice and he'd learn his trade slowly, like Seamus Coleman had to do. But Seamus Coleman's injured and he's right near the end of his career anyway, and he's a massively fading force. So, even if Seamus Coleman was fit, you're not really. There's no guarantee that he'd come in and be drastically better than Patterson for my money. But at right back, I would like to see James Garner at right back, to be honest, because he can do a job there. He's tidy on the ball. He played out at right back for England under 21s in the summer. We've tried him out wide in the first two games, but in a more forward role, and he's just offered nothing. And that's not a criticism of him. It's not his game. He's not a runner. He's not someone who is going to go past the man. He's not someone who's going to hug the line and get us up the pitch. He's a player who gets the ball under his feet and he keeps things ticking over. He spots a pass, gets his head up, and he finds a play running into space. He's limited in what he can do when we try and play him as the right-sided forward in a forward three, or as the right-sided winger in a 4-4-2 or a 4-4-1-1, whatever. I think Patterson is tidy enough on the ball that we could put him back to right back and he could just do his job effectively and kind of keep his head down and have a quietly effective game and allow Nathan Patterson a chance to just kind of come out the team and take a breath a little bit and sort of, help settle his nerves, because I think Patterson has looked really nervous and he's, as you said, he's looked all at sea. He looks like a player who's very, very anxious and knows that there's a lot of pressure on him and that we're kind of over relying on him, sort of thing. So I would like to see at the fullback position, I'd like to see James Garner slip back there because I'm confident he could do a job there, at least for this game. And I'd like to see Nathan Patterson likewise taking out the line of fire, at least in the short term, because I do think there is a player there, but we can't be expecting too much from too soon. And I think that's what we've been doing, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be against James Garner playing there. I'm no big Vitaly Mikalenko fan. Obviously, him and Patterson came in the same window. I think when we signed Patterson, I think it was, I love us signing young players who are going to get better and bringing assets on board, but I think we should have signed someone who was ready to come in then because we really needed a right back. John Joe Kenny wasn't good enough. Seamus Coleman was getting on and getting increasingly injury prone. Can't be expected to play 90 minutes, every 10,
That
twice
was a
every
year and a
10
half
days,
ago.
whatever. Exactly, yeah. So, and especially not now, obviously he's injured. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But um, just briefly touching on Wolves, we obviously mentioned the first couple of games. When I watched them against United, I thought they were magnificent in midfield. Obviously, they had Cunha, Joao Gomez, and Nunes, and they just burst through Man United. Obviously, United midfield was at sixes and sevens that first game they'd all played together and they were absolutely ran over. No Nunes this weekend. They produced very little until the game was done last week against Wolves and they scored and they should have had another one. Is there anyone on their team that you're particularly looking at? Who you worried
Kuna,
about at all? Mateus Cunha.
Mateus
Obviously, could have
Cunha,
signed
if
for
that's
us
how
obviously last January.
Yeah, I think we were in for him. Did he come from Atletico?
It was Atletico Madrid, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, but Wolves just, you know, spent money they didn't have. Clearly, they brought what they did in last January was they brought their summer's budget forward, and that's why they've got no money now. We were in for them, but again, I think we were offering our customary, 10p a week over 200 years, whatever it was, and they just gave the bulk of the fee up front. I
Mm.
think he's a good player and he's very, very pacey, and I think he's going to cause problems no matter who's in our central defence because three central defenders we've got who are likely to start. It's going to be Tarkowski for definite, and then it's either Keane or Branthwaite. They're all big strapping lads, aren't they? Neither one of them, none of them's particularly fast, are they? So he's going to look to try and get in between the two centre halves, no matter what pairing it is. In an ideal world, you'd think, well, Godfrey's got pace. Maybe Godfrey could slip in there, but Godfrey, he is a player I've given up on, even though he's still relatively young. I don't know what position Ben Godfrey is, and I think he's had enough chances now. So I don't think Sean Dyche is going to turn to him, even if he was willing to drop Michael Keane or another defender like Ashley Young or Nathan Patterson. I don't see Godfrey featuring in any first team plans. So yeah, Cunha is the player I'm really worried about because he's the type of player who will get his head down and will break the offside trap, or he'll find a yard of space for himself somewhere in our half, and he'll bring other players into play. He's a player who we need to man mark, I think. Jessica Gay or whoever it is who's going to play in the sort of sitter role, the number 6 needs to get a tight grip of him, because if he gets on the ball in our half, and he has space to run into, then he's going to cause danger. So if we can keep him quiet, then you do look at it and you think, well, where would Wolves get a goal from? Because they're like us, they're not particularly potent in attack, are they? But he is a player who concerns me, and I think he's the player who I hope that Sean Dyche and the coaching team have been telling the midfielders and defenders that they really need to find a way to keep him quiet. Because if he plays well, then Wolves typically play well, and if he scores, then I think Wolves will fancy their chances. If Wolves get a goal against Everton, then you'd have to pick them to win, wouldn't you? Because where are we going to get our goal from?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I was just double checking who scored for Wolves last weekend. It was Hwang, who came off the bench, isn't even in the starting lineup at the minute.
I forgot about him. But is he the South Korean lad?
Yeah, this fellow they signed from Salzburg, was it, I think.
Yeah,
Um,
pacey, and
I mean, he started against us a couple of years ago, and Cody scored the winner for Wolves. And I remember he went down injured 3 times in the first half, and the Gladys Street were obviously just a fever pitch by then. It was horrendous.
he
And
knew what he knew
only
what he was
0-0.
doing. They did their own work, yeah, just annoy the crowd, and the crowd will get on players' backs, and it'll take all the pressure off the opposition. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember it well. But um, anyway, I mean, as I say, it's going to be a really long day. I think on Saturday, it's not going to be an enjoyable atmosphere, even without all this stuff going on in the background. I think it would have been difficult anyway. But all this adding to it, and obviously it's only Thursday, isn't it? So when it comes to Friday night, something's going to happen at 11 o'clock. Someone's going to drop in the night before a game, something that no doubt's been fed out by somewhere or another. And we'll see
Yeah,
what happens there. But I think just finally on that, Paul, have you got any score predictions? I can't remember how many of these I've gotten right, but I'm not sure there's too many.
I'm probably going with my heart here, but I think Everton are going to edge it 1-0. I think it's going to be a set piece goal, off a big lad's head, a Tarkowski, or maybe even a Keane if he ends up playing, or a Decore. I could just see a scruffy goal mouth goal where there's a scramble from a corner, or it just lands perfect on someone's head. It's going to be a game that I think is devoid of quality and devoid of chances. It's just going to be a real scrap, a real ugly type of game, the type of matches that everyone associates with Sean Dyche's teams.
Mm.
And that's probably not quite fair, but I think that is what we're going to see this time. I think I'm going to go for a 1-0 Everton goal in the first half, and then it's just going to be clock watching for the entirety of the second half. It's going to be a really ugly, ugly game, but my heart is just edging to us managing to get that goal and managing to somehow keep Wolves out.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking 0-0, but I think that home advantage could make the difference
Could
in
prove the difference maker, yeah.
swaying it in our direction. But I must say, I'm not a big fan of Gary O'Neill after obviously he was Bournemouth manager, and when they came to Goodison on that fateful day in May, they knew what they were doing that day. It was horrible to watch. So I'm very much hoping we can get another one over him here, but we shall see. Anyway, thanks very much for listening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us, Paul, and we will obviously see what happens on the weekend. Let us know down below your thoughts on the game. Please obviously like and subscribe if you're new, and we'll catch you next time. Nice one.